Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Beth Ann, and today I want to do the whale tag, which was originally created by Ryan over at Book Time with Ryan. So I will link to his original tag video down below. If you don't know Ryan's channel, he does a lot of the typical booktube stuff, review videos, things like that, but a couple things that make him unique. One is the whale thing, because since he started booktube a few months ago, several months ago maybe now, he's gone on a journey with whales. So he had started by reading one book. He talks about it in his video. I think it was The Sounding, which was about whales, but then that's taken him on a bit of a book journey through some fiction and nonfiction about whales, and also Jaws as well was in there, which isn't about a whale, but we'll allow it, and Moby Dick. And so that's been sort of fun to see. Well, not sort of fun. That's been really fun to see a booktuber take a theme and run with it. I really like it when channels are able to do that. And then, unlike a lot of the people that I follow on BookTube, Ryan is what I would call like a real book collector. Like he spends some substantial money to get early editions or signed editions of various books, and so that's always really interesting to hear about. Sort of his collection being a bit different from a lot of the other people that I watch. So if you haven't already checked out his channel, go ahead and check it out. You should also watch his video of this original tag, because he intersperses each prompt with a clip of his daughter playing in a bathtub with whales. She's not on the screen, but there are toy whales that, you know, sort of go across the screen, and you can hear her voice, and it's really, really cute. So, okay. Intro aside, let's dive into the prompt. So this tag is fun because each prompt has a fact about a particular whale species, and then followed by a question that is sort of related to that, but bookish. So I really like that structure. Okay, number one, blue whale. The blue whale is the largest, heaviest animal on Earth ever. What's the longest book you've read or want to read? Or what's the heaviest subject that you've read about? So the longest book I've read, I believe, is The Count of Monte Cristo. Although if we want to count like all of the Lord of the Rings, I think that might be longer. But yeah, The Count of Monte Cristo, longest book I've read. The heaviest subject I've read about, there are definitely a lot. I'll just go with a recent book. So Chasing Me to the Grave by Winfred Rembert, which I'm reading for the BookTube Prize. So I won't say anything about my impressions of it, but it is a very simply told autobiography of Winfred Rembert, who was born in 1945, and so grew up in the Jim Crow South in rural Georgia, and towards the very end of his life, the last couple of decades, he became a pretty well-known artist, doing tooled paintings on tooled leather. So he will actually, I don't really know exactly all the terms, but he will carve the leather, so it's like a raised picture embossed in the leather, and then he will paint the elements of that picture with dyes. And his artwork is just beautiful. But anyway, so the book is just a very stark, simple tale of his childhood, early adulthood, up until his kids were sort of adolescents. And it is really, really heavy to read, as most books that talk about race relations in the U.S. are, but this one is stark and powerful in particular ways that most aren't. So I will talk more about that when I'm allowed to talk about my BookTube Prize reading, but Jim Crow South, very heavy subject. All right, prompt number two, sperm whale. Sperm whales routinely dive to a depth of 2,000 feet to feed on squid, but can dive to a depth of 10,000 feet. That is insane. What is a book that has motivated you to look deeper into a subject, character, situation, or series? So motivated, really none, because let's be honest, I do a pretty poor job of following up on things that catch my interest in books. So that it's that word motivated that's bugging me there. Many books that I read, I feel an immediate interest to go follow up with another book. I'll often go, well, first, I mean, I'll often spend some time on Wikipedia, depending on what I'm reading, especially if it's nonfiction. But in terms of following up with other books and like doing sort of some real research to educate myself, I often really want to. and will make lists of what I would want to read next. But there's so many books, so little time, and so I often end up sort of ADDing it around and not doing that, not following through. But that said, I have been pretty proud of myself the last couple of years, and certainly having a booktube channel for a year and a half has really helped with this, of following general themes. And so something I've wanted to do for a really long time is read more about race in the US and the history of race in the US and the modern landscape of race in the US. And so in large part, thanks to all the book recommendations on booktube, I actually have been sort of following that theme through a lot of my reading for the past year and a half. So I've been really happy with that. So that's definitely a big example. Yeah, I'll just leave it with that. All right, prompt number 3, humpback whale. Humpback whales sing long, complex songs they have in common with other individual humpback whales. These songs can change uniformly for entire groups of whales. What is a book that has changed meaning for you over the years, and why did it change? So I'm going to use Lord of the Rings for this one. Yeah, and so that's a little hard to answer because I don't exactly remember what meaning it had for me when I was like in late elementary school and my mom read it to me for the first time. Because she, even once my brother and I knew how to read, we would still have some time on the couch before bed where she would read big chapter books to us. So that's how I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings for the first time. But then I did read it on my own for the first time sometime in middle school, and then I did a book report, like a summer book report on it before 8th grade. And I think, I think I had some inkling of some of the deeper themes that were going on in it, but at that point, it was sort of like this epic adventure story with absolutely beautiful scene setting and myth building, and so I loved sort of those aspects of it, those more superficial aspects. But now as an adult, when I read it or when I reflect back on it, like I'm just struck more by the deeper themes that are still relevant today. And so one that I've been thinking about a lot lately is the role that individuals play in like major world movements, because Lord of the Rings, I think unique to most fantasy, really downplays the individual heroes in some important ways, and it's all about sort of collective action, and we see different pieces of what different groups of people are doing at different times. But then even within like the main ringleaders, the heroes of the ring, we still sort of get that sense like nobody really like does the thing on their own. They're always helped and supported, and at key moments they're all sort of playing equal parts, if that makes sense. And so I think about that a lot, and then I also think about the whether there's a happy ending or not. And in some ways there is a happy ending to The Lord of the Rings. Spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, stop watching this, don't do anything, go read it. But there is sort of a happy ending in that they save the world, but the world has changed. And so I really like that, that nothing goes back to the way it was before. You can't fix things. You can't erase a timeline. You can't erase the effects of really bad stuff on the world. And so I think about that a lot in the context of the US, that we have a lot of sort of a difficult collective past and present that needs to be dealt with. And there's a lot of talk about from people in all corners of the country on all different issues about like, how do we make it how it was before, or how do we reach some idyllic point that might reflect something from the past, and it's just not going to happen. So I think about that a lot. So that's a lot of vague babbling. All right, number 4, orca. Orcas, or killer whales, are incredibly smart social whales, dolphins. What's a book you felt was especially smart, fiction or nonfiction, and made you really think? So most recently that was Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, which I read last year. So just that whole reframing of the way American society is set up and what white supremacy sort of really means and what it's rooted in, power. So that really made me think. All right, number 5, beluga. Belugas are nicknamed the canaries of the seas because of the sounds they make. What's a book you wanted to talk to others about after reading it? Why? So pretty much every book I've ever read that I like and enjoy, which is why I have a booktube channel. And for all kinds of reasons, if I enjoy something, I want to tell people I enjoyed it. That's usually all it is. I don't feel like I have unique or particularly insightful thoughts about anything, but I just want to share the joy of reading with people. Prompt number 6, narwhal. Male narwhals, known as the unicorns of the seas, have 2 teeth, including one long, spiraling tooth that can grow nearly 9 feet long. What's a book you heard great things about before reading, only to discover it was less magical after reading it? I feel that way about a lot of modern fantasy. Not that I've read a ton of it, and that's not to say that I don't enjoy it, but especially just a lot of the books that get a lot of hype, and then I read them and I'm like, really? That was it? So yeah, I'm not thinking of anything particular right now, but that's basically, like last year I had a reading challenge for myself. I wanted to read the finalists for the Goodreads Fantasy Award. So all those popular books, and I dropped the challenge because the few books I read, I mean, N.K. Jemisin's The City We Became was on it, which I think is amazing. But of the other books that I started reading on it, I was just like, you know what, these are good, like they're enjoyable. I can see why people love them, and I love aspects of them, but they're yeah, I was just like, these aren't like hitting what I want to be reading right now. They're not as good as I was anticipating them to be in this moment. All right, prompt number 7, bowhead whale. While it's evident bowhead whales live well beyond 100 years of age, there's evidence they may live to be 200 years old. Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. Even having seen Ryan's video, I forgot. All right, what is the oldest book in your collection, or what book has been in your collection the longest? So for books that have been in my collection the longest, I mean, those are books that I was given as a child, and even thinking about books that I would reread now, that would be, as opposed to like children's picture books, that would be The Chronicles of Narnia and the Little House on the Prairie series by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I think maybe Anne of Green Gables, although I read my mom's copy for a really long time. In terms of books that I bought for myself with my early little allowance, that would be Tamora Pierce, the Circle of Magic series, I think I got really early, and like A Wrinkle in Time. I think I'd read my mom's copy as like a really tiny child, and then somewhere in early mid-elementary school I was able to buy my own copy. And then the oldest book in my collection I'm not going to be able to find right now because everything is a disaster. But from moving and future moving, but it is a copy, I want to say it's from the 1870s. It's a Quaker book by John Guernsey, if I'm remembering. Yeah, John Guernsey or Gurney. Anyway, I don't remember. And it's spiritual reflections and observations. I haven't read it. It was an old book I saw relatively cheap in a thrift store, and I got it because I'm Quaker. I was like, cool. Okay, number 8, Atlantic gray whale. Atlantic gray whales were sadly wiped out by humans. Today, only Pacific gray whales remain. Save the whales! Yes! What's one book that's either out of print or out of fashion that you wish would make a comeback? I don't follow... I don't follow things enough to know what that would be. But there's a couple things on BookTube that are relevant to that. So I like hearing about the Persephone, the publisher Persephone, and the books in their catalog. So Margaret Pernard in particular talks about those a lot, so I will link to her channel down below. And they focus on, I believe, female writers and maybe other people, but that are out of print from, I think, the early 20th century. And so I like that. A lot of those books are ones I would be interested in reading someday, for sure. And then early African American literature I wish we read more of. And so I'm saying that because, like, so for May of the Moderns right now, again, Margaret Pernard is running that readathon. I'm reading Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes, which was written, I think, in 1930, and is a lovely fiction book. I posted a review about how much I loved it last year down below, and now I'm reading it again because I love it. But I've also been doing, this year, I've been trying to do a year-long challenge of reading African American literature, and so the ones that I've started with are some poetry from the 1700s, so Phillis Wheatley in particular. And those are things that I just was never encouraged to read growing up, even though I was reading things by white authors from the same time period. And as I got older, like Phillis Wheatley, as an example, would be just sort of mentioned in classes or in history of books or like whatever. She would be mentioned, so I'd heard her name a lot, but it was never like go sit down and read her poetry or like learn something about her. So yeah, so I wish, I don't know if comeback is the right word. I guess it was pretty popular when it was published, but just more of an emphasis on reading this entire part of American literary culture and history, that at least in the places in the U.S. where I've lived was completely cut out. Okay. Bonus, Moby Dick. This is the last one. Moby Dick was the great white sperm whale Captain Ahab never caught. What is a book you want to own but haven't found or bought, and what's stopping you from hooking that book? So another plug for Ryan's channel, because I think it's really cool to hear about like specific rare books that Ryan would like to get and keeps an eye out for and is hoping to find them in the right price. Like I think that's really cool to see somebody with a collection of that sort. So he talks about that in his video. I don't do that. I am much more of a quantity over quality person when it comes to buying books, meaning I'll buy books that I want to read and that I think are good, but I would much rather buy, 20 beat up paperbacks from a thrift store than a single hardcover copy that's nice or has a signature in it or something like that. So that's my own personal preference. Once I have a house and care about the appearance of where I live a bit more, and maybe have a bit more disposable income, I might do a little bit more of just like wanting some of my books to look nice on the shelves, but don't hold your breath. I also have to save for my kid to go to college, so we'll see about that. So anyway, okay. And then finally, just tagging 5 booktubers to complete this tag, and remember to save the whales. So some booktubers that I wanted to tag are Literature Science Alliance. So I'm going to tag a couple people that do scientific stuff. They have bigger channels, so they may not see this, but just because it's nice to spread some facts about whales. So Literature Science Alliance, Josh at Josh's Bookish Voyage, and then I'm also going to tag some people that know who I am maybe a little bit better. So Brandon's Bookshelf, Rosie Cockshut, and Jess the Book Freak. So you've all been tagged. If you feel like doing this tag, please do so, but no pressure. All right, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.